The warehouse smells of olive oil, sweat, and fear. Stone walls hold the cold of early spring, and the air itself seems heavy, as if it has absorbed the breath of thousands who have passed through before. The year is approximately 146 years before the Common Era, 3 weeks after the fall of Corinth. The woman standing in the processing chamber was, until 23 days ago, the wife of a Greek aristocrat whose family had governed this city for 6 generations. Her name is Cleomach. She is 31 years old. Until recently, her world was ordered. She speaks 4 languages. She can quote Homer from memory. She managed a household of 40 servants and negotiated trade agreements on her husband's behalf. She raised 3 children who now exist somewhere in this same warehouse complex, separated from her during the first sorting that followed the city's capture. She does not know where they are. She has not seen them since the 2nd day after the walls fell. She does not know if they are alive. What she knows is this: she is standing naked on a stone floor with 11 other women. All of them come from families that once commanded respect across the Greek world. All of them are now the legal property of a Roman slave dealer named Gaius Varius Flaccus. All of them are being prepared for an auction that will take place in 3 days, in the ruins of what was once their city. She can feel the chill of the stone beneath her bare feet. She can feel the eyes of the dealer's assistants as they move among the women with measuring ropes and wax tablets, documenting height, weight, proportions, dimensions. Roman buyers will want to know. She smells the oil already rubbed into her skin, so it will shine under torchlight. She tastes the bitter residue of the purgative she was forced to drink at dawn to empty her bowels before examination. Along the far wall, she sees the implements laid out with professional neatness. Razors, pumice stones, cosmetic jars containing substances she does not recognize, thin metal instruments whose purposes she can guess but refuses to name, chains and collars in various sizes, waiting for necks that once wore gold. Then the man who owns her now enters the room. Varius Flaccus surveys his merchandise with the practiced eye of someone who has done this thousands of times. He has been in the slave trade for 27 years. He has purchased captives from a dozen conquered peoples. He knows precisely what Roman buyers want, how to prepare human beings to maximize price, and how to turn resistance into compliance without damaging the product. When his gaze settles on Cleomach, it strips her of the last illusion that dignity alone can protect her. "This one," he says to his chief assistant, gesturing toward her. "She still has her pride. I can see it in how she stands. 3 days is enough time to address that. Begin with the standard protocol. If she remains difficult, we will move to advanced techniques. What happens to Cleomach over the next 3 days, and what happened to tens of thousands of women like her across centuries of Roman conquest, is what this story reveals. This is not the Rome of marble temples and philosophical debates. This is the Rome of slave markets, where human beings were processed like commodities, where captured noblewomen were systematically broken before sale. This is what the slave dealers did. This is what the sources document. This is what most people were never taught. You know, Roman slavery in the abstract. You have heard that the Roman Republic and Empire depended on enslaved labor. You may think of gladiators in arenas, or oarsmen in galleys, of Spartacus and rebellion. But you were never shown what happened at the beginning. When free people became property, you were not taught about the processing facilities where captured populations were sorted, evaluated, and prepared for sale. Roman writers described these practices plainly, the way they described agriculture or manufacturing. They did not consider them shameful. It is later generations that learned to look away. To understand how Cleomach is standing in this room, naked and numbered, you must begin with how Rome made war. Roman conquest followed patterns refined over centuries. When a city fell by assault, siege, or surrender on unfavorable terms, the population became the property of the Roman state. The victorious commander, acting under senatorial authority, decided their fate. The sequence was predictable. Military-age men were killed or sent into labor so brutal that death was expected. Children were separated and processed as a distinct category of merchandise. Women, especially women from wealthy or noble families, were identified, secured, and transferred to professional slave dealers who specialized in high-value human property. The identification of noblewomen happened quickly, often within hours of capture. Roman officers had standing instructions to secure valuable captives before looting could disperse them, or soldiers could damage them. Soldiers who captured high-status women received bounties that exceeded ordinary plunder, creating powerful incentives to recognize and protect quality merchandise. The criteria were simple. Fine clothing and jewelry signaled wealth. Soft hands and unmarked skin signaled freedom from manual labor. Speech patterns revealed education. Household servants could be interrogated to confirm identity. Within hours, Roman officers could sort a city's women into price categories. Cleomash was identified when soldiers broke into her home. She was still wearing fine wool dyed with expensive Tyrian purple. Gold jewelry marked her status unmistakably. She was seized along with her 3 children and roughly 40 servants. For a brief moment, they were kept together. Then came sorting. Children, adults, skilled, unskilled, high value, low value. The family unit dissolved in an afternoon, approximately 6 days after Corinth fell. Various Flaccus purchased Cleomachi and 11 other noblewomen from the military authorities. The exact price is not recorded, but comparable transactions suggest between 2,000 and 5,000 denarii per woman, a massive investment. Flaccus expected to recover several times that amount through careful preparation and skilled marketing. The women were transported to his processing facility in covered carts. This concealment was standard practice. It protected merchandise from sun and rain, from the eyes of competitors, and from the psychological impact of watching their city burn. By the time Cleomache arrived, she had not seen sunlight for 14 hours. She had not eaten for nearly a day. She had not seen her children for 3 days. She had no idea where she was or what would happen next. Roman slave dealers operated facilities that combined warehouse, workshop, and preparation center. Archaeological remains from major markets like Delos show complexes with holding cells, bathing areas, examination rooms, and display platforms arranged in deliberate sequence. These were not places of confinement alone. They were assembly lines. The holding cells were small, 8 feet by 8 feet, designed for 2 to 4 captives. Fewer for high-value women to prevent injury or conflict. Bathing rooms included cold and heated pools, adjacent spaces for oiling, hair removal, and cosmetic treatment. Examination rooms held measuring instruments, medical tools, and carefully positioned light sources to reveal defects. Display areas featured platforms and restraints designed to present bodies in standard poses buyers expected. Flaccus's Corinth facility was temporary, set up to handle the sudden flood of valuable captives, but it followed the same patterns as permanent markets. Methods that worked everywhere worked here. Cleomachi entered this facility on the 14th day after her capture. She would remain in processing for 3 days. The first stage was assessment. Within hours of arrival, she was brought to an examination room in order to remove the simple tunic she had been given during transport. Standing naked before male assistants who regarded her body with professional indifference was itself part of the evaluation. It revealed how she reacted to the loss of physical privacy her status once guaranteed. The examination was comprehensive. Her height was measured, her weight estimated by experienced handlers, her proportions recorded, limb length, waist, hips, bust. Her skin was inspected for scars or disease. Her hair was assessed for thickness and condition. Her teeth were checked. Her hands were examined for calluses. Their softness confirmed noble status. Then the examination became more invasive. Roman law required sellers to disclose defects. Dealers who failed faced legal consequences. Thorough inspection was not cruelty alone. It was risk management. The jurist Ulpian would later write that sellers must declare if a slave was diseased, defective, or liable to punishment. The language is clinical. The experience was not. Throughout, Cleomachi remained silent, complying just enough to avoid force. At the same time, her psychological state was being evaluated. Did she hesitate? Did she meet eyes? Did she resist? Pride was noted. Control was noted. Her assessment would have read: female, approximately 30, Greek, noble, physical condition excellent, psychological condition resistant but controlled, likely to require intensive preparation. That phrase sealed the next 3 days of her life. The second stage of processing began at dawn, on Cleomachi's second day in the facility. Sleep had been shallow and broken, interrupted by footsteps, shouted commands, the distant sounds of other women being moved through rooms whose purposes she could only imagine. When the assistants came for her, they did not explain where they were taking her. Explanation was no longer part of the system. The bathing chamber was warm and wet, steam clinging to stone walls darkened by years of use. This was not cleansing in the way free women understood it. It was erasure. Assistants stripped away what remained of dirt and blood from the sack of Corinth, but they also scrubbed away the physical markers of her former life. Rough cloths and pumice stones scraped her skin until it burned, removing dead flesh and leaving the surface raw enough to absorb the oils that followed. Her hair was washed with harsh solutions that stripped away its natural scent and texture before treatments were applied to make it gleam under torchlight. No part of her body was left untouched. The thoroughness was deliberate. Privacy itself was a luxury the system was designed to destroy. Then came hair removal. Roman buyers expected female household slaves to conform to specific aesthetic standards, and body hair was not among them. Razors scraped skin already tender from scrubbing. Pumice stones ground against flesh. Resinous substances were applied and ripped away, pulling hair out by the roots. The pain was sharp and unavoidable. Roman poets joked about such procedures when free women endured them voluntarily. For captives, the pain served another purpose. It was a physical lesson. Your body no longer belongs to you. Cosmetic preparation followed. Oil was worked into her skin to give it a healthy shine. Substances were applied to her face to smooth complexion and hide minor blemishes. Her hair was styled according to Roman fashion, not Greek. When she caught a glimpse of herself reflected dimly in a bronze surface, she barely recognized the woman looking back. Familiar markers of identity had been replaced with something designed to please strangers. This physical preparation also included training. Cleomach was taught how to stand on the auction platform, how to turn at a command, how to walk to demonstrate soundness of limb. She learned the standard responses buyers expected: how to lift her chin, how to hold her arms, how to remain still while being examined. These were not suggestions. Failure to comply brought immediate correction: a hand gripping her shoulder too tightly, food withheld at the next meal, being forced into position by others, her body manipulated like an object. She learned quickly, not because she accepted what was happening, but because resistance only increased pain and prolonged exposure. Compliance in small things became a way to preserve some fragment of control. The third stage was psychological processing, and it was more precise than any physical grooming. Roman buyers wanted slaves who appeared willing, or at least convincingly resigned. A woman who obeyed only under constant threat reduced her value. Creating the illusion of acceptance was the dealer's true craft. The first technique was isolation. Cleomach was removed from the group of noblewomen and placed alone in a cell. The absence of shared glances, whispered reassurance, even shared fear stripped away mutual support. The only human contact she had came from assistants who reinforced the processing. Isolation made their voices the only voices in her world. The second technique was identity denial. No one spoke her name. She was called by a number or by generic labels: the Greek, the merchandise. When she tried to speak of her children, of who she was, the response was blank incomprehension or dismissal. Assertions of identity were met as if she had spoken nonsense. Over time, the effort to assert herself began to feel futile, even dangerous. The third technique was status demonstration. She was required to clean her own cell. She ate from a bowl placed on the floor. She was made to respond to commands with set phrases of acknowledgement. Each task reinforced the same message. Whatever authority she once held was gone. The fourth technique was uncertainty. No one told her when she would be sold, to whom, or where she would go. No one answered questions about her children. Time lost shape. Anxiety became constant, gnawing at her thoughts until exhaustion dulled even fear. Uncertainty drained resistance more effectively than pain. The fifth technique was witness to consequences. Through stone walls and corridors, she heard other women being corrected, raised voices, the sound of bodies striking stone. Cries cut short. She did not see what happened, but she did not need to. The lesson was clear. Resistance brought suffering. Compliance brought relief. Across 48 hours, these methods worked together. By the end of the third day, Cleomach understood what the dealers needed her to understand. Visible resistance only made things worse. Survival required appearing to become what they wanted her to be. The dealers called this state market ready. A modern observer might call it the beginning of traumatic adaptation. Cleomach would have called it the moment she learned how to endure. The auction took place 3 weeks after Corinth fell, in a temporary market set up in the ruins of the city's agora. Roman buyers had traveled specifically for this event. Conquest had produced a rare supply. Educated Greek noblewomen from one of the wealthiest cities in the Mediterranean. Such merchandise would not appear again soon. At dawn, captives were arranged on platforms according to the category. Noblewomen were placed where buyers would see them first. Each woman wore a placard around her neck. The titulus, listing incorrigible facts: origin, age, skills, Disclosed defects. Warranty terms. Cleomachi's sign identified her as Greek. 31. Literate, experienced in household management. Mother of 3. Buyers circulated slowly, examining merchandise. They asked questions of the assistants. They tested claims. They were permitted to inspect bodies directly, lifting chins, checking teeth, pressing hands against arms and hips to judge muscle and flexibility. All of this happened publicly, in full view of others waiting their turn. Cleomach complied. She turned when told. She walked. She stood still. Her obedience itself was evidence of successful preparation. The bidding began at midday. Prices rose with each call. Cleomach was sold late in the afternoon for 12,000 denarii, 4 times what the dealer had paid for her. The profit justified every step of the process. She was removed from the platform immediately, transferred to the custody of her buyer's household manager, and taken away toward Rome. The city of her birth receded behind her, already fading into memory. Cleomachi's story is not unique. It is a single thread in a vast system. To understand that system, you must look at other women who passed through it, women whose outcomes reveal how Roman slavery shaped lives in different ways. Let me tell you about 4 of them. The first was Bernice of Carthage. She was the daughter of a senator, 27 years old, when Rome completed the destruction of her city in the same year Corinth fell. Carthage did not merely lose a war, it was erased. The Senate ordered its buildings torn down, its land cursed. Its population dispersed so thoroughly that no city would ever rise there again. Bernice was captured during the final assault on the citadel. Her husband died fighting. Her parents died during the siege. Her 2 daughters, 6 years old and 4, were still clinging to her when Roman soldiers pulled them from the rubble and dragged them into captivity. They remained together only briefly. During the initial sorting, Bernice was classified as high-value merchandise, educated, noble, physically undamaged. Her daughters were classified differently. Children required years of feeding and housing before they produced value. The dealer who purchased Bernice did not purchase children. Another dealer did. They were taken in different directions, toward different markets, and Bernice never saw them again. Her processing followed the same pattern as Cleomachi's: bathing, grooming, training, psychological conditioning. But an additional technique was applied. She was forced to watch as her daughters were led away. The implication was unmistakable. Compliance might someday earn information. Resistance would earn nothing but silence. Family separation was not an accident of the Roman slave trade. It was a tool. Captives who had something to lose were easier to control. Bernice was sold to a household in Rome and served there for 11 years. She performed her duties with the competence expected of someone raised to manage others. During those years, she made exactly 1 inquiry about her daughters. She was told such information was unavailable and that further questions would be noted. She never asked again. She died around the age of 43, still enslaved, never knowing whether her children lived or died. Modern historians agree that this was typical. Families were deliberately dispersed across the empire. Slaves without family ties were easier to own. The second woman was Theodora of Macedon. She was 34 when Roman forces captured her city during the consolidation of Macedonian territory. She was not simply noble. She was a priestess of Artemis, a role that carried deep religious authority. Her capture was recorded precisely because of that status. Roman commanders understood symbolism. A priestess reduced to property demonstrated dominance not only over a people, but over their gods. The processing she endured was tailored accordingly. Beyond the usual isolation and identity denial, Theodora was required to renounce her priesthood aloud. She was forced to perform acts forbidden by her religious vows. She was shown looted artifacts from her temple, defaced and broken. She was told other priests had died, that the gods she served had failed to protect them. These techniques were designed to destroy religious identity. Modern scholars would call it forced deconversion. The Romans did not name it. They simply observed that a priestess who still believed could not be sold easily. Theodora was eventually sold to a Roman household, where she served for 8 years. A later source notes that she never participated in any religious observance afterward. Some read this as proof that her faith had been destroyed. Others suspect something quieter. That belief survived only in silence, where no dealer could reach it. She was freed when her owner died. What she did with that freedom is unknown. The sources fall silent. The third woman was Arsinoe of Pontus. She was 29, the wife of a military commander, and renowned for her beauty. Roman officers targeted her specifically. understanding the price she could command. Unlike the others, Arsinoe chose open resistance. She fought during physical preparation. She attacked handlers. She refused to assume display positions or respond to commands. The dealer who owned her faced a problem. Her beauty made her valuable. Her resistance made her unsellable. The response was escalation. Roman sources are vague about specifics, but they mention extended isolation, deprivation, restraint in painful positions, exposure to cold or heat. The goal was not punishment. It was submission without permanent damage. Arsinoe resisted for 6 days. When she was finally sold, her price was far lower than expected. She died approximately 3 years later. The Romans recorded her story as a warning. Resistance did not break the system broke her. The fourth woman was Livia of Gaul. She was 23 when Julius Caesar conquered her region. The scale of that conquest flooded the market. Over 1 million Gauls were killed or enslaved. Supply exceeded demand. Prices collapsed. Livia fell between categories. Noble enough to matter, but not enough for dealers to invest heavily in preparation. Her processing was abbreviated. She was sold quickly, cheaply, in a chaotic auction where buyers barely inspected merchandise. Her buyer was a provincial merchant, not an aristocrat. Her labor was harder and less refined, but the household was less rigid. After 15 years, when the merchant's business failed, she was freed, not as a reward, but as an economic necessity. A later reference suggests she survived as a small trader, working the same markets where she had once been sold. Her life was not redeemed, but it was not entirely erased. These women are known because evidence survives. Roman legal texts describe slave sales in meticulous detail: warranties, disclosures, examinations. Literary sources describe auctions and markets openly. Archaeology confirms the infrastructure. Inscriptions record names, prices, origins. Modern science confirms long-distance displacement, trauma, and family separation. Together, the evidence is overwhelming. Modern psychology recognizes the techniques Roman dealers used: isolation, identity denial, uncertainty, witnessing consequences, traumatic adaptation. The Romans did not invent these methods. They refined them. They worked for Cleomach of Corinth, for Bernice of Carthage, for Theodora of Macedon, for Arsinoe of Pontus, for Livia of Gaul, for millions of others. They were not commodities. They became commodities through systematic violence. Their compliance was not consent. It was survival. They deserve better. They deserve to be remembered.